since I've been on this journey myself, my ideas about retirement have changed a lot. And I, at this stage, am, really letting go of all of the shoulds about retirement. And there are a lot of them. There's a lot of pressure to have an ambitious retirement. There's a lot of pressure to do great things in this next chapter. There's a lot of pressure to remain as young as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And that may be right for some people. That may be what brings them satisfaction and a sense of purpose. But if you are not that person, if you want a much quieter life because you've had a stressful job your whole career, then that's okay. And in fact, whatever you choose is okay. Don't fall victim to the shoulds.
Welcome back to the Real Retirement Show. My name is Yasmin, here with my co-host Kathleen. Whether you're retired or thinking about retirement, we delve into the multifaceted world of retirement beyond the finances. This isn't your typical retirement discussion. It's a vibrant journey into what retirement truly means in today's world. We bring you real stories from real retirees and experts discussing real challenges, surprises, joys, heartaches, and the myriad of emotions that come with retirement. From addressing family dynamics to mental and physical health to finding purpose, we tackle the issues that truly matter to retirees and those thinking about retirement. Today, we are thrilled to welcome someone who has turned an unexpected twist into an inspiring new path. Meet Marilyn Hintsa, a dynamic voice in the world of modern retirement. When Marilyn was early retired from her corporate career in late 2019, she didn't slow down, she shifted gears. Instead of heading for the hammock, she got certified as a leadership coach and launched You Lead You post-career pathing to help others lead themselves into vibrant, purpose-filled post-career lives. Now, she's taking things even further with Next Chapter Dialogues, a fresh, powerful initiative that brings people together weekly on Zoom to explore life after work, aging, and longevity through meaningful, guided conversations. If you've ever wondered what's really possible in your next chapter, Marilyn is here to show you the way, with wisdom, warmth, and just the right amount of spark. Welcome, Marilyn. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, Marilyn, for those of us who have not gotten a chance to get to know you, would you share a little bit more about your journey and what inspired you to focus on the retirement experience?
Sure. So I would say this journey into coaching started before I retired. I was thinking that I wanted my post-career career to be in coaching. And so when I was unexpectedly early retired in 2019, it was pretty easy for me to decide to enroll in a coach training school and get whatever credentials I needed to get. And at the time, I was thinking that I would do leadership or executive coaching because people said, hey, that's where the money is, And I thought, oh, well, I want to make money. And so I chose my school accordingly. That's what they focused on. And then at the end of that, when I was going to hang up my shingle, I thought, wow, I realize now that I'm entering a really saturated market. There are a lot of coaches who do that, and I'm not sure I can distinguish myself in that group. And also by that time, it had been almost 2 years that I'd been out of the corporate world, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to go back to those issues again. I'm not sure I care anymore, right? And a friend of mine in my network, he's in the health sector, and he said that he had been seeing people, mostly men, who were on the verge of retiring or had just retired, not being really happy with their situation and feeling lost or not sure what to do or not making the most of their time or whatever. And he said they could use some coaching. So I did some research and found out that retirement coaching actually was a thing. And it resonated with me because when I was in my corporate job, I saw many people, again, mostly men, who were in senior positions, had long and very lucrative careers in the business. And so were very well set up to retire, and they were of an age to retire, and they didn't. They just kept coming to work and sometimes working sort of half-heartedly. And I thought, oh my God, what a drag. I was somebody who wanted to retire the day I started working. So I thought, come on, you guys, go and retire, have some fun. And I don't think that now. I think that choice to continue working is a very valid choice, and one that there's all kinds of good psychological reasons for continuing to do that. But at the time, that's what I felt. And that's why that idea of retirement coaching resonated so much with me, because I thought how nice to be able to help people do that better.
Speaking of helping people, are there specific types of clients that you work with? And if so, what are some of the common challenges that you've noticed they face?
When I started my practice, I thought I would, well, I didn't think, I actually did try to niche my practice into a particular profession. And that did not work out well for me because I chose the niche for the wrong reasons. It wasn't really where I wanted to be spending my time. And so I ended up coaching people who came from a whole variety of different professions, different roles, different outlooks. And I still recognize that I should probably be niching in some way and figuring out who I really wanted to work for. But as you probably well know, it's not that easy as a retirement coach to find clients, regardless of whether you're niching or you're not niching. And the majority of us coaches are not brilliant business people. That was never our focus. And so it's challenging. And so we all tend to take all comers, is my impression of most of the coaches that I know. And so I did too. And now that I have changed the focus of my practice to be more group oriented versus one-on-one coaching with my group work called Next Chapter Dialogues, what I want in those groups is as many perspectives and experiences as possible so that people can share and learn new things from each other. Niching or trying to figure out an ideal client would be a little bit counterproductive for that. Having said that, the people in the groups are people who are thoughtful. They want to be learning. They want to be sharing their experiences and hearing other people's. And they want to be in community as they navigate this journey versus doing it on their own or doing it one-to-one with coaches. So I guess I have come around to a niche, but a big one.
Well, Marilyn, oftentimes it's our experience that limiting mindsets really make a difference on how people navigate this. And have you found that's the case? And if so, how do you shift their mindset and their perspective on the whole process of retirement?
That's interesting. I find that the limited mindsets come in what their capabilities are, how much they're willing to step out of their box, how much they're willing to try new things, how much courage they have to do something different. So I find that's the mindset limitation. And I think the only way to help people get over that is to encourage them to take small steps, to encourage them to try a little bit, see how that goes, and to get around to thinking, if it doesn't work, it's no big deal. We can do something different tomorrow than we did today. And for me, and the way that I tend to work with people, I think that retirement is a time for trying lots of different things, for saying yes to things. And by doing that, you're discovering more about yourself, and you're able to slowly say, oh, I like doing this, and I don't like doing that, and I like this about that, and I don't like this. And gradually coming to the place where you go, okay, if I put all of that information together, that's what I want to do. I've now figured it out because I've tried a bunch of things and I've landed on the thing that makes sense.
Marilyn, you talked about people stepping out of the box. I'm curious, what have you noticed holds people back from stepping out of the box?
Courage. Or a lack thereof. Or they don't know what they want to do if they step out of the box. Like they don't know where to turn. They don't know where to start. And some people, of course, have been doing it their whole lives and it's easy for them. They love trying new things. Other people who are a bit more, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but it takes courage to do it. And it also takes letting go of the fact that people are going to judge you because you've done something that turned out to be not really great. So it's getting rid of that sense of people will judge me. And I think that this time of our life is a wonderful time to strive to be our most authentic selves. And I think that does require us to try new things because by doing that, we learn more about ourselves. And once you are confident about who you actually really are without all of those masks and everything else that we put on when we're working, you develop the confidence to do new things. You develop a new confidence and you are less concerned about the judgment of others.
I want to go a little bit deeper into this, Marilyn, because you've hit a nerve in something that you just said. I can so relate. Most of our listeners, our audience knows that I did retire and it didn't last long. And yes, I love working. But one of the things that you mentioned is the fear, or you don't have courage. But I think you're on point when you talk about judgment. The fear of being judged, of people saying, well, what are you going to do? What are your plans? And quite frankly, sometimes you don't have any. And saying yes to everything worked for me because it was really easy for me to realize very quickly what I did not want to do. And I love that you brought that to the surface. And I think that many people need the courage to realize that judgment shouldn't be a part of it. And to have someone like you kind of walk them through that process of learning, because it is a learned skill. Now, I'm just curious, though, if you've helped people get through this, can you give us an opportunity to just tell us a little story about a major breakthrough that a client had?
I had a client who had a very senior person in the not-for-profit sector. So CEO of major global not-for-profit organizations. And he was 6 months from retirement when we met. And he had gained a lot of notoriety in a positive way as a result of the work he had done. He had been rewarded for his work. And so he had a certain standing in society as a result. And he was concerned that this influence and standing in society might disappear when he retired. And so I said to him, so when you got into the work that you did, that gave you so much satisfaction and at which you were so successful, when you got into that, maybe in your 20s or your 30s, did you care whether you achieved a certain status in society? And he said, no, not at all. And I said, well, think on that, because is it really that important to you? If it wasn't part of your value system at that time, it probably isn't anymore. And he was really taken aback by that. I don't know what he's doing now. But anyways.
I think that experience must have really shaped the way you coach. Because those are very pointed questions. How did that change or shape your coaching practice?
I think that I've always been very direct in the way that I coach. I think that the role of a coach, quite frankly, is to be direct and say the thing that nobody else is willing to say and ask the question that nobody else is willing to ask or won't ask in that way. They might be a little bit more obtuse about it and you might eventually get around. But I've always been really direct, just in general, in my personality, in the way that if I want to know something, I just ask.
Marilyn, do you find that there are certain questions that you ask more often than others?
It's hard to say because with every week we have different topics. So the questions are really driven by the topics. And I would say that they're questions like, what do you think of what I just shared with you? Or what do you think of this concept that I asked you to read about or whatever? And then as we go around the room and everybody puts in their thoughts, I do ask questions that kind of go a little bit deeper for each of them.
Is there a topic that you could share with us that perhaps you've discussed recently? Like purpose or perhaps family relationships or loss or common issues that people are really interested in engaging in?
Well, purpose was one that they were all interested in engaging in. The idea of purpose is kind of amorphous for most people. They don't really know, what purpose are we talking about? Are we talking about why I was born? Are we talking about what gets me out of bed every morning? Are we talking about something else? I would say that each of the people in my group had a very different sense of what purpose meant. Parsing through that within the group really helped us come around to the idea that there are these three levels of purpose. There's the big P purpose. What am I supposed to do with my time on the planet? And then there's the daily purpose, which is a bit like ikigai. What am I going to do today that's going to be useful and helpful? And then there's that in the middle This is my job right now, my role right now. What is the purpose of this sort of stage of life purpose? And I found that the conversation with them on purpose had a session on it, and then it would pop up again later in another session when we were talking about something else. And we still struggle with this idea of, okay, how do I define my purpose? What is it exactly? I can't put it into words. I can't articulate it, but I know when I have it.
If someone's preparing for retirement, how would you help them get into that space where they think about purpose in those 3-level terms that you just spoke about? How would you help them prior to their actual retirement date?
I would ask them to consider if they have not yet retired, how they consider purpose in their current life. So is it the work that's giving them purpose right now as they're working? Has that always been true? Is it work that gives them purpose? Or is work just an expression of something for them, a way to make money, put a roof over their heads? And is there something else that gives them a sense of purpose? Is it their family? Is it their children? Is it their relationships? Like, where does that sense of purpose lie for them now? And if it is in their work, then I would talk to them about, okay, that's going to go away. So if you don't have another part of your life where you feel purposeful, we're going to have to work through what you might think is purposeful going forward, which might be anything. I think it's most important for people to realize that most of our lives, we don't think about purpose. It just is. It's delivered to us in various ways. We don't think about it. And so I think just beginning that thought process of, oh, purpose. Yeah, work is my purpose. That is it. Or no, it's not. And then being able to get deeper into what purpose might be for you if you didn't have this job.
That's a reflection of your direct questioning.
Indeed.
Marilyn, it seems like you get a lot of joy in working with groups. What is it about the dynamics of working with groups really resonate with you?
It's interesting. And I decided to go down this path, and it had been in the back of my mind for a long time. And I was almost ready to shutter my practice. And I said, no, you must try this before you shutter, just to see whether this was the thing you were supposed to do. And so I ran a pilot group, and I ran the pilot group partly to see how people in the group would react to this and whether it would resonate for them, but also to see whether I liked it, whether I enjoyed facilitating a group, whether I wanted to see them every week for 90 minutes.
That's direct.
I didn't say that to them.
No.
But I genuinely wanted to understand my own reaction to doing this sort of thing, right? And it was interesting because I was amazed at how much the group members got out of it, which of course made me feel really good. But I was also realizing week after week that I'm actually good at this, that I'm good at facilitating a conversation. I'm good at coming up with a topic that people will be interested in talking about. I'm good at making sure that everybody in the group has a say, and I don't let anybody get away with not commenting on one of my questions. And that, again, is my directness. When I was in corporate and I would be doing a presentation and people would never sit in the front row, I'd get somebody to move all the chairs out of the front row so that whoever was in the second row was normal. Because I said, come on, you guys, you're adults. Just sit in the front row, for God's sakes. Anyways, so I do run my groups a little bit like that, where you cannot hide. You cannot hide from me, and don't try. And so far, that's worked out really well. But I think what I get out of it is I see the way that people share, and the fact that after a few weeks, they trust each other. They care about each other. They're willing to be vulnerable. And I just love that dynamic, that change, that thing that happens in a group. I just think it's magical.
That's evolution at its best.
Marilyn, you talked a little bit earlier about holding, or I suggested that people are perhaps holding themselves back from stepping in the box. And I imagine that in a group setting, when you are listening to someone else share their story, that in some ways it gives you courage, but it also gives you permission to be able to contribute too. Have you noticed something like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that when one group member talks about all the things she's been doing within her community because she has decided that she just wants to experiment and try a bunch of other things, I can see other people going, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could try that. That doesn't sound so scary. And how did you end up doing that? So just the ability to turn to somebody and say, oh, that course you took sounds interesting. How do I sign up for that? Or where do I go for that? Or now it's at the point where the people who are living close together want to get together in
Wow.
person. And so that would encourage them to also go off and do things together and try. Because I think also that helps in stepping out of your box is if you've got a buddy who wants to step out with you.
That's so true. And we've watched and read so many studies about loneliness and how that is so pervasive, especially in this chapter of our lives. And what you're doing is not only introducing people to new ideas, discoveries, but you're also connecting people and potentially new relationships that can really enrich their lives.
And that was part of my objective when I started this, because I have come to learn as a lifelong loner to a large degree. In my later years, I've come to realize how important having people in your life is and how lucky I am, in spite of my loner tendencies, to have developed a lovely group of friends. And I'm more grateful of that now than I ever have been. And I think that the idea of being isolated and lonely in your oldest years would be terrifying.
Speaking of terrifying, how do you create a safe container or space for people to really share and be vulnerable?
That's where some of the magic is. You know, I find it amazing, really. I don't know how I do this. I don't know. It just happens.
I don't think people have a choice because you make them sit in the front seat. You insist that they all participate.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you do that, I remember when we were in school, the first time you had to sit in that front row, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but then it became incredibly comfortable and everyone was behind you, so you didn't really have to even see the reaction. But I think that your personality has created this environment to make people come out of their shells and see things a different way.
I don't know what else it would be, because I think I'm, in spite of my directness, is usually kind.
Yes.
I think that I accept people for who they are, and I don't really want to change who they are. And I'm curious about their stories. I'm curious about what they're thinking. And I think that comes through. And I think that's part of building a safe space and being a good listener, which is something I learned to be better at through coach training.
Because you make people feel safe, you're not judgmental. I
Oh.
think that sense of feeling judged frightens people from sharing.
Oh, yeah. And I've never been a judgmental person. So that is part of my personality, as you suggest, Kathleen.
Well, Marilyn, you mentioned how you've learned to listen. What other things has this process taught you working with clients?
Listening is certainly a big one. I think it's also made me realize how to be curious, more curious than I might have been in the past. And that we all have that we don't always reveal, partly because of judgment. And that sometimes it's just enough to be there. You know, when somebody needs some support, sometimes they don't need you to be asking them questions. Sometimes they don't need you to be saying much of anything at all. They just need to have somebody who listens. And I was out with a friend recently, and she had a close relative pass, and she hadn't really been out since that happened. And we were sitting over dinner just talking about normal things we talk about when I finally said, "And how are you doing?" And she burst into tears. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I haven't done this for a couple weeks." And I said, "Don't worry about it. Just be." And afterwards, she said that she was so grateful to have had that opportunity, just to have a normal conversation, but also to feel free enough in a public space to do that.
Yeah, that is such a gift to be able to share and be present and just listen and allow someone to be able to be seen and heard and understood. Because that in itself is the actual transformation that some people may not have the opportunity to have.
And it's interesting because that's one of the hardest things for new coaches to learn, that they don't bring value by suddenly taking over and trying to teach the client something. They bring value just by being there for the client and allowing them to do the exploration that they need to do.
Mm. I bet that really is even more noticeable in a group type of setting because instead of being the teacher or the person who knows the answer, you're actually just facilitating, allowing them to interact.
Yeah. And especially when they decide to go in a completely different direction. And the first time it happened, I was kind of like, okay, what's happening now? Because I tend to be quite script oriented and agenda oriented. The first couple of times it happened, I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And it all worked out really well. And they had a lovely time. And I thought, oh, I know how to do this too.
Well, isn't it just another form of discovery, though?
Absolutely.
Marilyn, if you were to meet someone who is thinking about retirement, what sort of lessons or what would you share with someone that's on this journey?
I guess it depends on where they are in the journey. But if they're early in the journey, I think I would say don't go it alone. There's lots of resources you can draw on, ones that you can access on your own. You can hire a coach. You can talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to the people of similar age at your gym, just because you're all in the same boat and will welcome the opportunity to chat about this time of life. If you're feeling alone, you don't have to feel alone. There's lots of people around you who will be happy to share their experiences, and look at this time as a time of regeneration versus an ending, and a time that is exciting and should be full of joy, as your sign says behind you. Those as your goals, to be joyful, to be happy, are very excellent goals for this time of life.
I'm feeling joy just having this conversation today. It's wonderful to understand that there are people like you and our listeners who can be as impressed with your straightforward. And I think that it's a pure and a curious attitude that you have. I would say direct. I would say straightforward and compassionate. And that provides an environment for people to really be the people they want to be, as opposed to people that they've designed by virtue of their career or their family or some of the other obligations they've had in life. I think today's conversation has been really freeing for many people who've been in that position.
For those listeners who want to learn more about you and your work, how can we find you?
You can access my website at www.youleadyou.ca. I'm also on LinkedIn under Marilyn Hintsa. I'm occasionally on Facebook, but not very often. But I welcome anyone connecting with me on LinkedIn or via my website.
Okay, great. We'll make sure to add those to the show notes. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience just from our conversation, or just anything that you want to inspire people with?
Since I've been on this journey myself, my ideas about retirement have changed a lot. And I, at this stage, am, really letting go of all of the shoulds about retirement. And there are a lot of them. There's a lot of pressure to have an ambitious retirement. There's a lot of pressure to do great things in this next chapter. There's a lot of pressure to remain as young as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And that may be right for some people. That may be what brings them satisfaction and a sense of purpose. But if you are not that person, if you want a much quieter life because you've had a stressful job your whole career, then that's okay. And in fact, whatever you choose is okay. Don't fall victim to the shoulds.
Well, what a gift to be able to have this conversation with you, Marilyn, and thank you for sharing your insights and being here with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been delightful.
Thanks again, Marilyn.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it valuable, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment or review on your favorite platform. If you have friends, clients, or loved ones who are retired or thinking about retirement, we invite you to share this show with them. Check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned in this episode at realretirementshow.com. Remember, retirement is a joyful journey we get to experience together. Join us next week for another Real Retirement Conversation.